Rolling a chord means playing its notes usually from bass to treble in quick succession, like that. Some people also refer to it as arpeggiation. The highest pitched note of the chord, like on the first string here, is often emphasized because lots of times it's the melody note, and therefore they're usually the last to be plucked, like that. Segovia preferred this type of roll, and it's an important aspect of his and many other players' performances. So this most common way of rolling a chord looks like this: a 4-note roll, or 4-string roll, 5-string roll, 6-string roll, like that. Because we're spreading out the notes instead of playing them simultaneously, rolling a chord throws off the beat. In other words, if I start a rolled chord on a beat, the last note of the chord is significantly delayed. In notation, you can see it looks like this, where I'm starting the roll on the beat on the 6th string, and then by the time I get to the 1st string, that 1st string ends up off the beat. It would sound like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So the high E ends up on the ands of beats. Now usually we want the top note of the chord, again the melody in most cases, to be hit right on the beat. And most people do this naturally. It's notated like this, where we start with the 6th string on an upbeat and end up with the high E, again, which would usually be the melody note, on a beat. So that sounds like this: 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So again, my high note ends up on a beat. Therefore, when playing a rolled chord, it's important to decide when you should start it and when the final note should be plucked. One must be aware of or feel when that final note is played. Ask yourself, where do I want the beat to fall in this rolled chord? Otherwise, the rolled chord could cause the rhythm of the measure to become confused. So, to take an example, here's a passage from Pavane number 1 by Luis Milan. If I start the roll, it goes like this, and we have a rolled chord here. If I start that rolled chord on the beat, it sounds like this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's strange, it doesn't fit in quite right. Listen to it again. It throws off the beat. It should sound like that. So the open B is on the beat. So when you're playing rolled chords, you want to be very careful how you're placing them rhythmically, that you're intentionally placing the melody note on a beat, which is the usual case, or off, if you're doing it off the beat, that you're doing that intentionally. Otherwise, again, the rhythm will sound confused. Now, to execute the basic roll, place the fingers on the first 3 strings, the treble strings. The I finger, index finger, should be on the 3rd string, M, the middle finger, on the 2nd string, and the A finger, the ring finger, on the 1st string. The strings should be seated perfectly against the left sides of the nails, touching the flesh and nails together, like this. Don't be on just the skin, don't be on just the nail. It's got to be flesh and nail together, and again, preferably on the left sides of your nails. Not straight on, but on the left sides of your nails. Just standard classical guitar practice. Then the thumb placed on the 4th string. Now, you can set the thumb, ideally I would do it so you're touching nail and flesh together like that. However, if for whatever reason you can only touch flesh of the thumb, that's fine. For now, that's fine. Again, if you can, touch flesh and nail. Eventually, you'll learn to do either placement at will. Now, if possible, allow the fingers to hang together, to touch each other at the tips slightly and lightly. Don't splay the fingers apart like this. Now, some people, their fingers naturally splay apart. If that's the case with your hand, fine. But if you allow the fingers to relax and if they naturally touch each other, that's a good thing. Because when they touch each other lightly like that, it gives the fingers a cohesive feel for working together to do these rolled chords. It's a little easier than if your fingers are splayed apart. Now, from that planted position, fingers on the trebles, thumb on the fourth string, play the arpeggio pattern P-I-M-A. What you want to do, you want to play deliberate rhythms that space the notes fairly widely at first, and then gradually shorten the time between each note like this. So start out, plant, play evenly like that, not something like that or that, even. 1, 2, 3, 4, just 4 even notes. Plant each time before you play, and make sure the plant is perfect, that you're on the left side of each fingernail, if you have nails, left side of the nail, flesh and nail together. Then do a little faster. Plant, play, plant, play. Then a little faster. Now, if you find this getting uneven, that you have a hesitation, like that, then slow it back down, get the evenness back, then try it faster, until you're doing it fast and evenly. And then eventually, just a quick P-I-M-A, like that. Now, be very careful when you're doing this. Don't turn the hand like that. Don't roll the hand, at least not in the early stages. The turning of the hand, flicking of the hand, throwing the hand, that comes later. At least I prefer it to come later. I would rather you learn to do this with a steady hand position, just like that. So be certain to plant all 4 fingers each time before you roll the chord. Make sure you have perfect flesh-nail contact on the strings. And practice slow to faster and faster. Your goal is to have even spacing between the notes to produce a cohesive roll. Try to make your rolled chord sound like the chord strummed by just the thumb, so that this sounds like that, rhythmically, evenly. That's a good way to check yourself out if you're playing it evenly. At the faster speeds, some people describe the sensation of rolling from this planted position as snapping your fingers crisply, cleanly, and fast. Now, practicing with the slow to faster and faster method will not only help you learn the technique of rolling a chord, but will also enable you to vary the speed of the roll at will. In other words, a rolled chord is not necessarily that. It could be that, 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 that. You want to be able to control it at will. And again, some teachers suggest throwing the hand to the left like that as the roll is executing, holding the fingers together and thinking of it as all one unit like that. And what happens, this lessens nail resistance and can actually help quicken the playing of the notes, getting them closer together. But other teachers say to avoid this, at least in the early stages, because if it's not done carefully, it can cause the first string to catch on the A fingernail, producing a bad tone. Now, you can try to learn the roll with and without throwing the hand just to see what helps you get the hang of it. But again, my personal preference is to teach the student to learn to roll a chord without throwing the hand. Once you can execute a 4-note roll with PIMA, try a 5-note roll. Once again, plant IMA on the treble strings. Be certain each string is seated perfectly against the left side of the fingernail and flesh simultaneously. Then set the thumb on the 5th string. And at this point, once again, you may set the thumb so the string is touching only the flesh, like that, or flesh and nail together, like that. I would prefer you do that, but again, if you can't, just do flesh alone. Do whatever's most natural. Later, you'll learn to do either technique at will as you become more proficient. Now, keeping IMA planted on the treble strings, play the 5th string and drag the thumb from the 5th string onto the 4th string, so that playing the 5th string is actually a rest stroke. Now, because the thumb is now resting on the 4th string, it can play the string very quickly and easily using free stroke. Just comes right off the string like that. Then continue playing through the chord with I, M, A, playing the treble strings. So think of it as a sweep of thumb strokes followed by the I, M, A finger strokes. And be careful when you're doing this that as your thumb is playing, that your A finger doesn't actually come off of its resting point on the 1st string before it's time to play. Make sure that A finger stays glued to its string until it's its turn to play. And use the slow, fast practice technique. So you'll begin with something like that. Plant, plant, and then faster. Again, keeping the fingers together lightly, not spread apart if you can. And just faster and faster until you have a nice cohesive roll. Now you can also, as a practice technique, practice quietly, loud. Might as well be developing that ability from the get-go. Again, the goal is to maintain even spacing between the notes, but be especially observant of the evenness between the 5th, 4th, and 3rd strings. The thumb drag may result in the 5th and 4th strings being too close together, like that. Or you may hear a pause between the 4th and 3rd strings, which is the transition from the thumb to the fingers. That nice and even. Bass strings even, and no pause from the transition from thumb to fingers. The same instructions apply to the 6-note roll. Plant IMA on the treble strings. Be certain each string is seated perfectly against the left side of each fingernail and flesh simultaneously. Then set the thumb on the 6th string. Again, at this point, you can set the thumb so the string's touching only the flesh or flesh and nail together. Do whichever is most natural. Later, you'll learn to do both techniques. Now, keeping IMA planted on the treble strings, play the 6th string and drag the thumb from the 6th string onto the 5th string. It's a rest stroke. The thumb is now sitting on the 5th string. Play the 5th string rest stroke, dragging it onto the 4th string. Now, because the thumb is resting on the 4th string, it can play the string very quickly and easily with free stroke, and then you continue playing through the chord with I, M, A, playing the treble strings. So the 5 and 6 note rolls should feel like a sweep of thumb rest strokes, with the thumb gliding across the strings in a continuous rest stroke, followed by the I, M, A finger strokes. Just like that. And use the slow, fast practice technique. Start very slowly. Get the technique down. Plant, play. Make sure, once again, that the A finger stays locked against that first string as you play P, I, M. Fingers held together lightly, naturally, if possible, not splayed apart. Roll or plant each time before you roll. And again, don't rotate the hand. Don't turn off to the side. Don't throw the hand. Just stay steady. Here it is a little further away so you can see the entire hand. Notice I keep my hands steady. Just move the fingers. Plant, play.